Hey guys, welcome back to the Real Results Show, where we feature real health coaches and health practitioners getting real health results for their clients and themselves. As always, I'm your host, Bern Vermeyer. Messed up my name, clinical advisor for FDN, and I'm the director of our tribe's awesome association, the AFDNP, where we get to support the community with ongoing education regarding a variety of clinical and business building topics. We love learning, we never stop learning, and we really want to empower our tribe with the best scientific information and the best business building education, because we want to develop the best professionals out there that are able to practice FDN successfully. So this week, I'm excited to have my friend Linda Downey on the show with us. Linda, how are you doing today?
Oh, thanks, Brendan. I am great. I'm thrilled and excited to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you every time. I love, it's kind of a passion project, this show. We get to talk to all my favorite FDNs, talk about all things FDN. So for those of you watching live or the replay, doesn't really matter, be sure to put results, all one word, all caps, into the chat box. Again, results, and you can actually get a free 3-step guide to getting real results for you and your clients. So don't miss out on that. But Linda and I are going to be talking today all about people with chronic conditions. So, Linda, I'd love to kind of throw it over to you. Of where should we start digging in with, there's so many people with chronic conditions these days, and it's only on the rise.
Yeah, unfortunately. And so I'd like to start with just why I'm passionate about that, because that was me. I spent a lot of my adulthood, I was diagnosed with 4 different autoimmune conditions starting in my 20s. A lot of my 30s and 40s were spent really unwell, really struggling, really going to doctor after doctor, being on thyroid medications and all of that. And at some point, I thought, somewhere probably, 12 years or so ago, I thought, this is not working. Like, I just keep getting the next diagnosis. And so I went back to school and I became a functional health coach. And then I realized I wanted to learn more and I wanted to be able to help people at a deeper level. And so I scouted around and found FDN. And that's really where I like to focus my practice as people, because that was my journey.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, something that is a very common theme in our community is how, what I love about the FDN methodology is, like, literally it applies to everybody, period. And that's because we don't have this reductionistic, isolated, specific approach. Our principles of holistic health building apply to anybody, regardless of what's going on with them. And so what's beautiful is we can all develop kind of our niche demographic of who we really like to serve. And usually it's some kind of reflection of ourselves, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, for me, definitely it was, because, if you go through something, whatever it is in your health or in a relationship, probably it's just part of being a human being, right? You go through it, you come out on the other side, and then you think, wow, there's a lot of other people. And as you said at the beginning, unfortunately, there's probably, 80 million Americans who have chronic health conditions, autoimmune conditions. So it is on the rise. So, it makes me happy to now take that journey instead of a woe is me, I was sick. It's like, wow, that was really a gift, because now I get it. I understand it. I know where my clients, how they're feeling, and I can walk them through it. And that's really a gift, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing thing. I literally couldn't imagine any other line of work. And I'm curious, kind of to the audience, kind of engage whoever's watching. How many of you guys have been diagnosed with a chronic condition, or maybe multiple autoimmune conditions like Linda? So, Linda, I'd love to hear a little bit about, what were some of the key things that you did to help yourself navigate your healing journey? And then we can kind of segue into how then you serve people in the same way.
Sure. Yeah. So I did what I think a lot of people do. Probably, like I said, 10 or 12 years ago, I just started reading. I started Googling, right? The internet is a great source of information. And I started Googling and reading things and taking things on and trying them in my life. And they were helpful, but I only got so far, you might hear about bone broth, right? So people start, chugging bone broth every day or giving up gluten. And that helped to a degree. Like, I felt somewhat better, or maybe even significantly better. But after time, I noticed symptoms would come back, or I didn't feel as good as I wanted to, like as I knew I used to feel.
Mm-hmm.
And so So that prompted me to say, okay, I can see that nutrition makes a difference. I can see that, my lifestyle, I had a lot of stress in my life, which who doesn't, right? But I did really have a lot, and I justified how I felt by that stress. Like, well, of course, I had a child in the hospital all the time. So I thought, of course, as a mom with a kid in the hospital, I'm going to feel exhausted. But at some point, I started to realize this is not the way I really want to feel, even if it's okay. I don't want to feel this way. So after doing whatever I could with just general information out there, and that's really, I think, the struggle, because I'll see people say, oh, try this, try that, and then that other person tries it, but it may not be what's right for them. And that was what was happening for me. I was trying stuff and maybe feeling a little better, maybe not. So that's when I said, I've always loved school. So I was like, I got to go back to school. Where can I go? And FDN is, where I ended.
I really love hearing that story, and you're so right. Obviously, there's no one size fits all, and it's funny how we all like know that, but do we really practice that regularly? And the internet, gosh, we have access to every bit of information in the world all the time, but then that also means you have to dig through it all and you have to wade through it all. So we run into this paralysis by analysis really often. So I'm curious, what was it about FDN that really made you feel like this is the right fit for me? This is what I want to go into.
Well, I had, as I said, I think I said, I was already had gotten certified as a health coach. So I was a functional health coach, but I recognized that I needed a deeper understanding to help people at the level I wanted to help people. I could work with people for 8 weeks and make them feel kind of, somewhat better. But if I wanted to really help people really recover and reduce and get rid of their symptoms, I needed a better understanding. And that requires, I think, some lab work, right? Because you can have somebody who has cortisol issues or stress. Well, is their cortisol really, really high, or is their cortisol bottomed out? And sometimes things have very similar symptoms, but if you don't really know what's going on, then you're guessing, right? Our motto is test, don't guess. So when I started to look around, I was like, I want to understand. I want to understand what's going on with my clients. I want to really know to a much better level without having to go back to medical school for 8 years. And so that understanding with with FDN of really like, oh, I can use this lab and that'll give me that information, and then the support from you guys, to know that I have this whole community behind me, right? Your face, because I love your posts. If something, oh, I'm not sure what to do, or my client comes back at this, there's this whole community with people with a lot more experience who can say, okay, this tells us that, and then I've learned on that, in that instance, and now I've made the appropriate choice for my client or suggestion for them.
Absolutely. That's my favorite part too. I love our community and our community vibe and supportive, and yeah, it's great and we all support each other because I monitor that group and I'm answering a lot of questions, but it goes the same way. Like, it's not like I know everything, and so occasionally I'll hashtag tribe, throw it back at the tribe, and people teach me stuff. So that's the power of our numbers. And give a little shout out to Karen, who said great to see you guys. So giving her a little shout out, a little love there.
Hey,
Karen. But something I always kind of think about is, with functional lab testing, that really is kind of the main thing that sets us apart from any other kind of professional out there. And that's where, I think it's helpful to clarify between like functional medicine versus functional diagnostic nutrition, because ultimately the methodologies really are built on the same science, the same labs, the same material, the same kind of way of thinking. But then it's, well, is it more from a medical treatment because the person is really ill right now and the functional medicine physician is trying to treat that root cause reactively, allopathically with drugs and or supplements and or lifestyle stuff, whereas the FDN, we're really being a little bit proactive, shall we say, of like, let's look for those hidden stressors proactively, in people that they're not really like clinically ill, they just don't feel well and they're not getting answers anywhere else, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, they we can take them so far with just really partnering with them hand in hand, because when I work with my clients, it might be for 12 weeks, but we're really together in the journey, so that we look at everything, all the part of their life, every part of their life, from their food to their stress management, to their movement choices, to their sleep, to their relationships. It all comes into who we are as a human being, and we're always taking in information, right? Everything is information coming in, and our body responding to it. How late we watch TV into the night, all of it is telling our brain something. And so people don't realize that. So when you can, another Karen's on. Hi, Karen.
Yeah.
When you can really walk with someone and say, this has a lot to do with how you're feeling. Oh, really? And then, well, I don't know how to change that, okay, well, I had a daughter in the hospital, and I know what it's like to be stressed. And I can tell you, we can do something about that. There's strategies to help you navigate your issues, whatever they are, differently. And so that's looking at the whole picture, and I love that.
Yeah, you're so right, and that's where it's like we really do walk that journey of self-healing with them. We're there to empower, educate, hold accountable, guide them through that process, because ultimately, there's a lot of amazing medical care providers out there, but generally the medical providers are not in the trenches with them every step of the way. And that's really the difference of being like a true next level functional health coach versus, being a medical provider. And we need all the above, but I definitely feel that functional health coaches like FDN practitioners are just in such dire demand today, because there's such a huge gap that our profession really fills.
Yeah. And like you said, there's great medical providers, but they're not gonna be on the phone with you every week. They're gonna say, here you go, try this, come back in 4 months, let's see how you do, maybe we'll tweak it. And the person goes home, and maybe that office has a good email system and they can send in a question, maybe not, but they go home and they might feel overwhelmed, or no, I'm 3 weeks into this, and this is too much. But if you have someone walking the walk with you the whole way through and saying, nope, hold on, we got this, okay, this doesn't work for you, let's try this, that's a whole different experience, I think.
Absolutely. It really is that that partner in health, that more holistic way, because, certainly it's kind of funny. I started my career in nutrition and fitness background, and it's funny how by the time I got to where I am today, I kind of assumed that everybody else in the functional space had a lot of coaching skills, but the reality is that's not really the case. Like, being an effective coach really is its own skill set that involves a lot of psycho-emotional work and navigating. So it's like, it's really hard to find professionals that have the education and knowledge with something very objective and sciencey like lab testing, but also can then help guide you through that on that psycho-emotional level, and be, like you're saying, be readily accessible for every obstacle along the way.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's marrying both those skill sets to get the best outcome for the client.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'd love to hear a little bit about, you mentioned you love to help other people with chronic conditions like yourself. I'd love to hear a little bit more about, do you have like a niche demographic, or kind of like what's your jam of what you love to work with?
It's my jam.
Yeah.
Women primarily, not that men don't also get chronic conditions, but I feel like it's much more prevalent in women, number one. And number two, because I am a woman, I think I can relate to, even if it's just the most basic thing of a lot of moms and wives put themselves last. That's just a typical way that many women might live, and put up with feeling crummy just because it makes everybody else's life keep going. So that is, I think why that niche speaks to me, and so, yeah. And it's really, like I said, chronic conditions, thyroid always shows up. That seems to always get slammed no matter what else people might be dealing with, but thyroid is pretty common. And yeah, I've had people with fibromyalgia. I've had people, but again, it doesn't really matter the symptoms or the diagnosis, because we go at it with the same tools, I think.
Right. Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned that because it is kind of like, wait a second, guys, like how does this FDN methodology work so well for everybody? And it's like, well, because we're using the same fundamental principles that if you're a human, if you're a part of the human race, it applies to you because our physiology is more similar than not. So then it's just a matter of finding, well, what are those weak links in your chain? What are your hidden stressors? What are your external sources of stress so that we can coach up function and coach down dysfunction? And Karen, I see over in the chat box saying, so when I think of chronic issues, I think of the cell danger response by Dr. Navio. And yep, cell danger response, Karen, you and I should hang out and talk. But she asked, are there any tests to identify mitochondrial dysfunction or mitochondrial function? That's where good old organic acid testing, which just released a course on. But it's fun. Oh yeah. Thank you. I'm honored. It was a fun project. But Linda, you were saying, your specific demographic, and what you said at the beginning is so accurate. Where men and women, certainly everybody's getting chronic conditions these days. But I just was looking at some statistics the other day, and you're right. Women statistically do compile more chronic conditions on average statistically, especially in the autoimmune realm, which you were diagnosed with 4 yourself, right?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
remarkable.
Starting, I was 21 when I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, and I'm 55 now. So that's however long ago that was. I went to a GI doctor. He did not. He treated me with prescriptions. I remember there was an opioid because I had to sign something at the pharmacy for it was very painful. And that was like my 20s. And then there was just digestive issues, right? And then but in high school, probably 5 years prior to that, I had mono, Epstein-Barr virus, right? And later on in my 20s, I got Lyme disease because I had dogs. Always out hiking. And then I had Graves' disease. I still am a personal trainer. I had my master's in exercise physiology. So I always was a fitness person.
Yeah.
I was a personal trainer all the way through, but I was this exhausted and then eventually overweight, exhausted personal trainer. Like, this is not who I am. This is not who I know myself to be. I was an athlete all through high school and in college. And then all of a sudden I could barely, by 10 o'clock in the morning, I had to lay down.
Yeah.
So into Graves' disease, adrenal fatigue, which, now we have a lot of conversation about that, but my doctor at the time, rosacea, I was always inflamed, and then Hashimoto's. And that was the final straw because that was in my early 40s. And I said, why do I have Hashimoto's now when I had Graves' disease? Like before it was hyper, now I'm hypo. And the endocrinologist said, I don't know, that's just sometimes what happens. And that's when I was like, come on, I eat well. Well, I was a runner, so I was eating pasta all the time, right? Like that old mentality, right? Carbo loading for an event. And after all the gut issues, that was terrible for me, but nobody ever connected that, in my 20 years ago. So 30 years ago. So anyway, now understanding that we all have a gut, we all have a liver, we all have a lymph system, right? And whether one person has Epstein-Barr, somebody else got Lyme's, I was lucky enough to get both, or whatever else it is. Those hidden stressors are there, and then we just have to cope. But if you give the body the right tools, so much can be recovered, so much health. It depends on the damage and how long that's been going on, but you really can recover so much if you're really committed and you have that partnership with someone, I think.
I totally agree. And this is why I love these shows. I love getting to hear everybody's story and their background. And I didn't know you were a personal trainer, but I love hearing that because honestly, we get all walks of life in the FDN community. We have medical doctors, chiropractors, dietitians, everything in between. But, being a, lifelong personal trainer myself, and I just, there have been a lot of trainers that I think, trainers make excellent FDNs, and it's such a good adjunct to the fitness services, because we can do the bro science, talk fitness, nutrition all day, but if we're not doing the holistic health building and the objective lab testing, how could we possibly accurately guide somebody to optimal health? So
right. Yep. And it's
Yeah.
so interesting now because with this background, my FDN background and my integrative health background now, when I get a new training client, and really more and more, I'm more health coaching and working with that. I don't take on new personal training clients anymore, but I've had clients for 20 years. I have a lot of people I've had for a long time. But if I do speak with someone and they say, oh, they start to talk, no matter what I do, I can't lose weight. And it's like a woman in her 40s and she's got some weight around the middle. Like I just know right away, it's like a hormonal issue, which I didn't know before, like 20 years ago, it would have been like, okay, we're going to have you do sprints, kill you until that weight comes off, which is what I did to myself. But now I'm like, okay, hold on. It's not your fault. It's probably your hormones. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about what's going on with stress in your life. And they feel validated. They feel like, oh, it's not just me failing at my fitness goals,
Right. Right. Well, you're exactly right. I'm actually giving a talk on exactly that, of weight loss resistance, at the medical fitness conference next week. But you're right. I mean, weight loss resistance is on the rise, and obviously, when the lay person, average person thinks like, I need to get healthy, it's usually more like, well, I need to lose weight, and I think I'll get healthy when I lose weight. So let me go to the gym, hire a trainer. And then, kind of the old school trainer mentality is like, okay, work out hard, restrictive dieting. And it's like, there's not the psycho-emotional component. There's not. So ultimately it's like, let's work smarter, not always harder. Let's work with the body, not against it. When you've got a lot of metabolic chaos, your body is already really stressed out. Is a hard exercise regimen or restrictive dieting really what we need right now? Or should we be coaching up function, right? So.
Right. Yeah. So I love it because even with my training clients, I have a different perspective now when I work with them. And I'll get health coaching clients who will start off with, I want to lose weight. I want to feel, I want to have more energy. In fact, I just finished with a woman who I started with in August. She hired me as a personal trainer. And as we started speaking, I said, Janine, I don't think you need to exercise right now. She had a special needs son. My daughter was always, as I said, always in the hospital. That was our connection. Someone referred her to me. Oh, you also have a special needs child. Linda will get it, right? So anyway, she's like, I just want to lose weight before I turn 50 in February. And I go, I don't think you need to exercise. I think we need to talk about your stress. I could just tell how to talk. She was like, like wired, tight. And so she was like, really? I go, let's take exercise off the table. Are you willing to work with me on your hormones? And she's like, well, I do have thyroid issue. I'm like, I'm not surprised, So then we never did exercise at all. And she lost 22 pounds because we took on her diet and her stress and, all of that. So, but it's just recognizing the total picture, I guess, is where
I love hearing that. Well, and it's breaking the cycle of trial and error that so many people are caught on, just like a hamster wheel. And it's like, I mean, you can keep running, you're not going to get very far. And so that speaks so well to it, because it's like, and that's where the lab testing, obviously, so everybody's seen my fingers, I can count to two, but it's one of those, the lab tests really serve two purposes. For one, it helps us as a professional identify the hidden stressors that are unique to them. Because we could focus on a lot of things. We could, I need to change my deodorant because this one has aluminum, or I need to, eliminate gluten, but everybody's different. And so we want to make sure we're concentrating our finite resources, our finite budget, attention, focus, energy on the things that are going to really move the needle. That's really working smarter, not harder. So identifying those key hidden stressors, but also it's a compliance tool for the client to show them, hey, you're not crazy, you're not lazy, like it's not your fault. There is objective scientific rationale that explains why you're not losing weight, why your hair is falling out, why you're cold all the time, why your joints hurt. And if we work smarter, not harder, by addressing these hidden stressors, and then stuff like that happens where the weight just falls off and people start feeling better, even without having to punish themselves in the gym. And you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Because I punished myself a long time. My mentality from 30 years ago was, because I had done some triathlons when I was younger. I had done a marathon. So I thought, I'm supposed to work harder, and then I felt bad and like a fraud, like an invalid trainer when I couldn't get better,
Yeah.
lose weight doing that, so I know how that feels. So to get that validation and to give people like, hey, it's not, your body is just doing what it can do with the tools it has right now. Let's give it the tools. Let's find out what's missing, give it the right tools, and let's see what happens. And usually we're pretty happy.
Absolutely. I love that. And all of this just makes me think my own journey a lot, because I was that personal trainer, nutrition guy. I was a big bodybuilder at the time, and I was really keen on the keto diet, which here we are 10 years later and everybody's doing it. But I was like had more weight on me than I had ever had in my life and was struggling to lose it. I felt awful, depression, ADHD, gut symptoms. So it's just I love hearing your story. It just resonates with me so much, and it's I'm so proud of you and the work that I'm proud of all my FDNs, but I just see you doing amazing work, and it's just so needed in the world today.
Thank you. It makes my heart happy. It makes those years of feeling exhausted really worth it now to be able to the tables. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Well, gosh, I mean, hearing, what you overcame with EBV and all these autoimmunity and Lyme, it's just like, my heart hurts for you. But again, that's why it just makes me so proud to see where you are now. And then you're paying it forward. You're serving the rest, because we're all in this together.
Yep. And I just, my last thought is, if you looked around at the world and the level that people are operating, like who they bring to the table in their family, as a parent, as a spouse, who they bring to the table in their workplace, if they're exhausted, if they're fatigued, if they're depressed, it affects our emotions. If 80 million people are walking around and that's how they're operating, what would the world be like if we got those 80 million people to be living the life the way God meant us to live our lives, right? And showing up as their best self? It would be a very different experience, I think.
I couldn't agree more. And, when you consider the fact that a whopping 70% of the American population is overweight or obese, and 45% are pre-diabetic or diabetic, and how many gym memberships are being sold versus how many success stories, what would happen if we worked a little smarter, not harder? You know what I mean? So this has been a lovely conversation. I want to make sure, because there might be a lot of people watching that really resonate with your stories. So how can they get in contact with you if they want your help?
Oh, thank you. I have a business page on Facebook. It's Organic Health Journey is my business page. My email is organichealthjourney, all one word, @gmail.com. So they could send me an email. They could go on that Facebook business page, or on Instagram. I also have tech is my nemesis. I'm new on Instagram, but I'm learning. I am 55, so it's not so easy. But anyway, on Instagram, Organic Health Journey, but that's always where you'll find me, that name. So that'd be
cool.
great.
Organic Health Journey. Tech is not my nemesis too. The fact that I run a virtual business, I don't know how, but but hey, we pulled this off pretty well today. So we're doing something.
I was nervous.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me, and for everybody watching, thanks for tuning in. Don't forget, you can put results, all one word, caps, into the chat box to get your free guide to real results. But otherwise, we will be back next week for another round. Linda, I hope you have an amazing day, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you. I look forward to seeing you in the organic oats class.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.